Ready? Okay,
Yep.
I'm still Nick. My summer job in college was at the cemetery that was about 3 blocks from where I grew up, and my dad got me the job there through nepotism. He was on the city council cemetery board, so I thought I had to go in and work really hard to prove myself, but I learned right away that they didn't want me working too hard because their boss thought it took 3 days to mow the grounds, and it really only took 2. So yes, best job I ever had. The customers didn't complain or anything, and we didn't have to deal with a lot of the gore for the most part. The funeral homes did that, though we did have to disinter somebody once. Their kids wanted them moved next to their mother, and the coffin kind of fell apart when we were moving it. And it wasn't haunted necessarily, at least not by ghosts, but there were some people who kind of haunted it. There was Mr. Meager, whose wife had died, and he'd come out every day and bring flowers and talk to her for hours, which was really sweet. But he'd also pee on her grave. And then there was another guy whose daughter had drowned at 2 years old. He fell asleep on a boat, and she crawled over the edge, and he'd come out and just scream all day. So that was rough, but for the most part, it was a great job. And one of the things about it is in August, it doesn't rain that much. The grass gets dry. So our job was to level out the rows of the cemetery. One of the hardest things about digging graves is knowing how much dirt to save to put back in, and you end up with these little hills and valleys. And the whole thing about graves being 6 feet deep isn't really true. They're about 5 in Ohio anyway, and you're usually buried in a stone vault. So the grave is only about 2 feet underground. So we would level these out and then put grass seed down and put straw down and wet that so the moisture would stay in. And farmers would let us come around and sweep up their straw. So we went out to this one farm, and I met the 3 old farmers. They all had baling twine for belts, and they all talked at once, and no one could understand them, but they could understand each other. And we got a load of straw, and my coworker and I went back to the cemetery and spread it all around and watered it, and came back in the afternoon. And in the time that we were gone, one of these 3 farmers had died of heat stroke in his tractor or combine or whatever. And it was really creepy to meet someone and have them die immediately afterwards. And about 2 weeks after this, I was at my cousin's wedding. And during the rehearsal dinner, they had assigned seats, so we were all sitting with people we didn't know. And I was the only one at my table who was under maybe 75 years old. And then I learned that the woman sitting next to me grew up across the street from this farm. So I told her the whole story of meeting this Mr. Kazmaier, and then he died. And then she says to me, well, there's an old wives' tale that if you meet a gravedigger, it means you're going to die. And I was like, oh, don't tell me that. And they all thought it was hilarious. There's something about people when they get to that age, they can laugh about death in a way that young people can't. And so the joke of the whole night was that they were having dinner with the Grim Reaper. And I didn't think much of it after that. But one Monday morning, I walked into work, and my boss took me aside and said, hey, Nick, I just want you to know that we're burying one of your relatives today. And it was the woman who told me that if you meet a gravedigger, it means you're going to die.
Wow.
And,
wow.
So I guess the moral of the story is that you're all going to die.
Round of applause. That was fantastic.